Hello, everybody, and welcome to Morality Matters. I'm your host, Michael Belton, and I'm joined by a very special guest tonight, Jeff Struecker. How are you doing today, sir?
Man, I'm great, Michael. Thank you for inviting me to be on the show.
Well, it's so great to have you, and your background is incredible. For those that don't know you, you were an Army Ranger, served in Somalia, just have an incredible story. Can you give us a quick, I know it's hard to do, but a quick little synopsis of your background?
Yeah, put a stopwatch on me. I think I can do this in less than 60 seconds.
Awesome.
Joined the Army at 18, went straight to the Army's Ranger Regiment. I did a bunch of combat tours with them as an enlisted guy, Panama, Kuwait, and then Desert Storm, and then Somalia, Blackhawk Down. And then I felt a definitive call to ministry, became an Army chaplain, did a whole bunch more years in the Army before retiring. But in the last half of my career, I went back and forth to Afghanistan and Iraq more than a dozen times. I retired from the Army, came on staff at a church the next day, right outside of the military base that I spent almost my entire career in. And a friend of mine and a few years ago, planted a church to try to reach the military and give everything that we've got to them here in this big military community right outside of Fort Benning, Georgia. That's it in a nutshell.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for the viewers. What I want to share real quick is we're going to be talking about two different books here, just slightly. You can get both of these books, everybody, on Amazon. Jeff, your book, The Road to Unafraid, I've read it. Absolutely incredible. We're going to be talking about that a little bit today. And then Emily Capano's book, I didn't know when I got it, and I had a chance to speak with her and take a photo op with her at the Fox Nation award ceremony this past year. And I got her book and I got it autographed and everything. And I didn't know like all chapter two was like dedicated to you. Like absolutely incredible.
Yeah, well, let me tell everybody, go buy Emily's book. You don't have to buy mine. And the only reason why my story made it to chapter 2 of Emily's book is because I was willing to give it to her for free. I love Emily. I thank God for what she's trying to do, in our nation and on behalf of King Jesus. And when she reached out and said, "Hey, Jeff, could we borrow your story?" After working with my publishers, I was like, "Absolutely, Emily, and you can have it for free."
Oh, that's incredible. And I tell you, she is something else. She's absolutely a blessing to have met and to had a brief opportunity to talk to her with her as well. So I want to start off if I could, because for those like the Black Hawk movie, like everything for Somalia to me, I was in the army at the time, but I was in the honor guard. I was in DC, right? So at the time when Black Hawk Down kind of the whole thing happened, and honestly, I really didn't understand it. I didn't understand like why we were there, what we were doing. I heard that we had lost a bunch of Rangers. I didn't know it was 18 at the time, but
Yeah.
I knew we lost a bunch of Rangers, and I'm like, what are we doing? And it didn't make a lot of sense. And it was probably because I was young, I was naive, I didn't know any better. So, like reading your book and just trying to put all the pieces together, it was so fascinating to me. But I will also tell you, when I was reading your book, it like actually affected me quite a bit. Like there's parts of your book that were like, whoa, it hit me kind of hard. And I kind of want to share some of those, but I want to start off with Emily's. And I want to read this because for a lot of people on here, we talk about morality a lot. We talk about salvation a lot. And there's something that was written in Emily's book I kind of want to share with everybody. It says, "What I sensed was clearer than anything I've ever experienced in my life. It was not a burning bush. I've never heard an audible voice, but I felt the Lord saying, 'Jeff, you were able to fight the way you did last night because you have already settled your death in eternity, and the rest of your buddies haven't. And they need someone who understands and knows what they're going through, who can look at them in the eyes and can talk to them. And I want you to be that guy.'" Wow. I mean, and one of the most interesting stories what I got out of your book was you actually talk to your buddies in their eyes. I
Yeah.
mean, talk to me about that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for doing what you did for our country, man, and the way that you're still serving. not just you, but all of your audience. And I also want to say specifically, thank you for taking care of my buddies who didn't make it home with me from Somalia and are right now interred at Arlington National Cemetery. Means the world to me. The honor that the honor guard and the old guard provides in those military funerals. Um, I'm still doing today what I experienced that moment in Somalia. And I should say to the audience, I never saw this one coming. Now, I joined the Army with a very, very solid faith. And through many other battles, that faith got me through those battles. But I just loved being an Army Ranger. And I just assumed I would keep doing that for the rest of my life. Man, it was just a privilege every day to get up and to go to work with those incredible warriors. And then this call to ministry, there's really no other thing to describe it, came out of left field. Like, man, I never saw this one coming, but it was so crystal clear. I'm standing on the airfield where we were staying in a big airplane hangar in Mogadishu, Somalia, immediately after Blackhawk Down was over with. And as I said in that book, it was very clear from God, Jeff, you were spiritually ready for this fight last night. Your buddies have all of the training. They're physically tough. They're mentally prepared. Tactically, they knew everything that they needed to know. And still, they weren't able to fight the way you did because there's something missing. And it's the spiritual part of it. And I want you, Jeff, to spend the rest of your life ministering to the soul. That's the language that I'm using today. I didn't know those words at the time, but I just felt God challenging me to minister to the soul of America's warriors. That very day, I started telling people about Jesus, and they were waking me up at night, lined up, waiting to talk to me about it. And ever since then, I've been chasing that same vision that God has laid in front of me to keep going after the military and keep pouring into them and getting them ready spiritually for. I tell people, as an Army Ranger, I used to get warriors ready to meet the enemy. Now I feel like it's my job to get them ready for eternity. And
Oh, amen.
I want to spend the rest of my life doing.
Oh, man, that's outstanding. And so I want to get to your book now because like there's some pieces that I think our audience really need to hear. And I do encourage you. I know you don't want your book promoted that much, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's very humble of you. But like this is a story I'm telling you that everybody, it's a must read, especially if you're in ministry, especially if you're in chaplaincy, working with veterans. I just think it's a must read. I'm going to add it to all of our chaplaincy reading list on there. So one of the things I have is it's earlier on, but then I'm going to skip again to later on because you kind of give a more perspective of why that's in. So like on page 16, you said like here you talk about your time about having to go back out again. And you just believing that you're going to die, and I believe that that thing's real, right? I've been on deployments where I've had that feeling. That's not a good place to be, right? Even if you still have a strong faith, and I think it's important. And here it says, "I'm going to die tonight." And what's just as bad is I'm going to get every one of my other men killed. I just know it. There's no way we can survive another run back into the city. Tomorrow, this squad is going to have 10 dead Rangers instead of just one.
Yeah.
And then you went on to say, and this is kind of like, man, I started tearing up. And I'm going to try not to do it on this one because like this one and the next one I'm going to tell you just like hit me, right? It says, if I survive tonight, I eventually get to go home to Dawn, which is your wife, and our new baby. If I died, I get to go to be with Jesus in heaven. Either way, I'm a winner.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my goodness, that's powerful. And then I'm going to skip ahead to like page 138, where I'm sorry, it's 106. Um, skip ahead to 106. It says, uh, and this kind of goes back to that sense of duty part. And it's just like the two thoughts run through my mind. One was practical. As long as there are rangers out there in the city, my job is not over. Like that, like you just know, like
Right.
I've got to overcome thing. And you said something earlier in your book. I can't remember where I found it at, but like bravery is not what not absent of fear,
Right. Yeah.
right? And then you say, one is practical. As long as there's rangers out in the city, my job is not over. I have a significant responsibility here. The other was reflective. I'm really am going to get killed tonight. I've made 2 runs already and lived to tell it. But now comes a third. That's probably it for me. Like that one there is like, oh my goodness. Like to put that in perspective of like how pivotal that moment was. And then you're able to then realize and be receptive enough to hear from God to say, not every ranger that was serving with you was in the same
Right.
place,
Yeah.
right? And that you had to do that. And then later on, I read even in the following part of your book that all those that have survived and came out of that have come to know Christ. Let me talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Well, so first I'd say I never really sought to get a book published. In fact, I had publishers approaching me after Blackhawk Down, the movie, came out, and I really wasn't interested. I was trying to remain clandestine. I had a job that allowed me to be undercover, so to speak, and I had planned to do that with the rest of my career. And then the fame from the movie Black Hawk Down just shattered that. So when publishers started talking to me about writing a book, even Christian publishers started saying, "Hey, Jeff, we think you need to consider writing a book." I was not interested. One, because I didn't really feel like my story was all that different than any other ranger that was with me. But second, I didn't really want to become known, a known name, because that would change my career.
Right.
The thing that got my and honestly, I fought with some publishers for about 6 months and told a lot of them no, and then finally a publisher approached me and said, "Listen, Jeff, we wanna help you write this story. Dean Merrill will use Dean Merrill, who's the co-author, and frankly, he's the reason why the book is readable in the first place. Dean will help you write it, but Jeff, we believe your story can minister to people that are struggling." That got my attention. So I'm telling your audience, the only reason this book exists, and really all of the books after that, was I wanted to try to reach men, especially, who were far from Jesus and who wouldn't necessarily go to church. Maybe they're not going to go to a chapel service, but they would be willing to read a war story. And I wrote the book just so that I could get people to the last chapter where I really start to introduce them to Jesus, his death and crucifixion, his resurrection, and what it can do for their soul. What I needed to do, and I recognize this, is I needed to earn the right to be able to tell some really tough men who feel like, I'm so strong, I don't need Jesus. I'm tough enough to handle all of life's pressures. I wanted to tell them, oh, really? You think you're that tough? Well, let me tell you what real toughness looks like. And even I need Jesus. So if I need Jesus, some of the toughest men who've ever lived on earth need Jesus. You do too. And here's how you can find him. And I used some very real moments from Somalia to try to back that up. One
Yeah.
final note, I really don't think that there's anything unique or special about my faith. I really feel like any genuine follower of Jesus would have done what I did in Somalia. It just happened to be a unique circumstance, but I really don't think there's anything unique or special about my faith that's different than somebody else's. And I hope that that's how it comes across in the book.
It does. As a matter of fact, it was heartbreaking and humbling in a lot of areas, and I think that's probably was your intent. And I will tell you, I got a lot out of it, and so I do encourage everybody watching to go ahead and get that. And it is something that I think is important. Like there's a couple of the points I want to talk about, and I think it's important for people who are definitely, working in ministry, with veterans, working with things, and that is, the effects of you serving. And I
Yeah.
kind of want to go to a part in your book that it's really later on, it's near the end of the book, where you guys were pulling out.
Right.
And to me, this one was another one that I just was like, man, that is so sad. And you don't want to relate to it, but I actually can relate to it a little bit. And it was difficult, right? And it was when you were pulling out and you were just like, that cost us 18 men. Another 73 got hurt. But are any of us whining about it? No. We can't. Why can't the politicians in Washington back us up and stay the course?
Yeah.
And then it went on to say, we wanted to return with honor. Instead, we felt dishonored and trivialized. We wondered what our commanders back at Fort Benning, our family members, and the average person on the street would say. And then you went on to say, like, your wife was very gracious and patient with you early on in the early weeks to allow you to readjust back to home life. Some guys had mental health problems when they returned from combat. All those things could be expected, but like the part of just you know wondering what the average person and wanting to be an honor to your commanders, to the military, to people, to your family, to your friends, and everything. That is a perspective that that we talk sometimes in ministry about moral injury,
Yeah.
not what is coming. Like that is a real tough thing. Was it not until like the movie came out, like in 1999, that that course kind of
Yeah.
shifted?
You nailed it. I didn't talk about Somalia. I didn't want to talk about Somalia. Now, since the movie was released, and it's been a long time now, I've
Yeah,
talked about it countless times, and I'm honored to do that. I'm honored to tell the stories of the guys that I fought with. Let me put it that way, and how Jesus showed up in the middle of this battle. I think your audience will understand this better than the average American, because the average American doesn't have this sense of honor, the sense of duty that a lot of your audience does. But for me, listen, about half of the guys that were in our force in the city streets were either killed or wounded that night. Essentially, half of us were killed or wounded because of this 18-hour firefight. And every single guy that I worked with felt the exact same way. If this fight is important enough, I will gladly die for it. Now, I don't know anything about Somalia. I don't have any background in Somalia. I don't have any vested interest in Somalia. And by the way, we're not in Somalia to try to get your oil. We're not trying to put a puppet government in place. The only reason the U.S. went to Somalia, the reason the United States Marines landed on the beaches of Somalia in December 92, was to feed a starving country that was dying by the thousands daily because of famine. But the worst injury that you could do to me was not physical. I would have gladly lost both arms and both legs. The worst injury would be to treat it like what I did didn't matter, or nobody cares about what just happened. And I want to give mad credit to Presidents George Bush, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, even Presidents Trump and Biden, to stay the course in the global war on terrorism, because sending warriors off to battle means it matters enough that we're willing to keep you there, no matter the cost, no matter the consequences. We're going to keep you there, and we're going to let you fight it out until we win. If we're not willing to stay there and fight it out until you win, then what was all of this blood for? What was all this death for? What did you send us there in the first place for? And the worst, I'm just being blunt right now with you, Michael. The worst thing I've ever had to endure in the Army for 23 years is being sent home and feeling like I failed my country. And I didn't talk about it, didn't want to talk about it, refused to talk to anybody about it until the movie Blackhawk Down came out. Because when that movie came out, then people started saying, well, maybe this wasn't a failure. Maybe this was just a very violent fight where a lot of people died. And then after it was over with, we washed our hands of it and everybody went home. After Somalia, I started talking about it openly. But before this, I never wanted to even have the conversation. My mother watched it in the movie theaters and never heard a word from me about it. She called me after seeing the movie and she said, I had no idea what you went through, and it's been years since you got back. And I said, well, that's on purpose. Like, I didn't have those conversations with you on purpose because I didn't want to have those conversations. And I didn't want to lay that junk that you just saw in that movie, right in your lap. So, yeah, going home from Somalia. And by the way, I did 9 combat tours to Afghanistan and 5 to Iraq. And the way that the US pulled out of Afghanistan was equally painful for me. watching us leave Afghanistan like that. But I told people, as hard as it was to see us leave Afghanistan this way, it was harder for me to leave Somalia the way that we left Somalia, because it essentially said to the world, it wasn't important enough to stay there and to fight it out.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. For
Hell, I
me,
got a lot more I'd like to say about this, but I think I'll just leave it at that.
yeah, I mean, fair enough. I mean, I feel the same way about Afghanistan that you just mentioned because I was there with CSOT of 10. I was part of SOCIR at the time and deployed to Afghanistan, and we went after and our teams went after Taliban guys, right? So like when they pulled out, I was just like, what was it all for, right? I mean, because now we left Taliban, who had been fighting for 20 years, we left them back in charge.
Yeah.
Like, did we just go back to steady state? Like, what actually changed in
Sure.
Afghanistan?
Yeah.
And that was hard. I still minister to people now who they didn't like the withdrawal. And the way I kind of do it, and the way I would share with the audience when you're ministering to people and so forth is this, like what you did while you were there. You know that you served honorably with those that you served with, right? You know that you did what duty you had called. Like you can't control the geopolitical climate, right? Those types of things, they're just beyond your scope and your thing. And then you have to ask yourself, well, did I win at what I did, right?
Right.
Did I achieve what I was called to do? And in every situation that I've looked at, the answer is yes. Those things were achieved, right? So, I run into a lot of people who are broken over their service. And my word of encouragement there is look at the victories of your service,
Yeah.
right? And look at that and put at the footstep of Christ and just say, okay, you know, between you and him, they know what's real, right? Like you both know what's real, right? So and I tell people just be true to it, right? What you went through, um, it should not be marginalized. And I will tell you also, Jeff, thank you so much for your service. I had no appreciation for Somalia at all, even though I was in the army at that time, until the movie came out myself. And then when I saw the movie came out, I was like, whoa. And then I started doing a little bit more research, and a lot more information started coming out on
Yeah.
it, right? About the Delta operators and about you know the pilot that was taken hostage and all that. I was just like, wow, there's so much here,
Yeah.
and stories I hadn't even heard before. So like that movie really changed it. One kind of interesting little note is you kind of mentioned it in your book too. Is like um, the part of leaving out where everybody's kind of running. That's not true. That was really the Humvees. They got all shot up, and you guys really exit on Humvees. So the movie wasn't 100% accurate, but I think it portrayed or gave people at least a good sense of what you guys went through.
Yeah, I mean, the movie is about as close as you can make a major motion picture. Look, it is a movie, but I don't know that you could make a movie any closer to what really happened than what you see in Blackhawk Down. Now, the actual battle was vastly more violent than what you see in the movie.
More violent than that?
Yeah, much more violent, like
Oh
a
my
factor of
goodness.
10 more violent. But no audience could stomach that kind of violence. So what you see is it's a great realistic depiction. I do want to say though, a bunch of Rangers and a bunch of operators came out on my Humvees, but not all of them. There was a handful of them that ended up running all the way out of the city streets and all the way back to the closest UN controlled territory, which was a soccer stadium where the Pakistanis were. We just called it the Pakistani soccer stadium. So a handful of guys did make the whole, what we call the Mogadishu mile, the whole run all the way back, because the vehicles, as you said, were so shot up, or there were so many dead and wounded that there was no room for everybody. As many people that could get on the vehicles were, and then a handful more just had to run out of the city streets on their own.
Yeah. So you come back from that, and it takes some time. There's another part and you get into it later about you changing to chaplaincy. What you know explain to us your calling to get into chaplaincy.
Well, so this one was a bit of a challenge. And I think most of your audience, especially those that are in ministry, understand this. But I felt the call. It was definitive, but making that public, man, that was a little bit scary. Not a little bit, that was a lot scary. I'm not saying that I had this reputation that I was out there trying to protect. Basically, what I was saying is I was doing my best to lead Bible studies and talk to people about Jesus and share my faith openly. I was doing all of those things, but at some point I had to make it public. Okay, guys, I'm moving in an entirely different direction than being a ranger sergeant. And I bit my lip and held on to that for a long time. And then finally got into a position where I was about to be promoted and had this incredible job offer that I was being offered. And I had to go to my boss and say, listen, I can't take it. And they were dumbstruck, like, are you crazy? What do you mean, no? And I was like, well, shoot, here goes. I'm going to say it out loud. Since you asked, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm supposed to pursue ministry. And if I take this job, there's no way I can do that. So I'm going to have to do something different. And no exaggeration, I had that conversation at like 9 a.m., 0900 in the morning. By noon, everyone in the unit was talking about it. That, did you hear Jeff? He's going to go to Africa and be a missionary. I mean, it was spreading like wildfire. And I was like, I don't know why I was just being so, I wasn't ashamed about it, but I don't know why I was being so hesitant to admit it out loud. I just got to, at some point, I got to say it. All right, guys, I can't do what your career progression for me is. I know what God's calling me to do next, and I'm going to have to pursue that and let the chips fall now, wherever they're going to fall. That was a difficult moment for me.
Yeah, and I will tell you, you were definitely tracking. And for those of you who don't know Jeff's story, I mean, you won the best ranger
Yeah,
competition in
well,
'96. It's just like, it was your third time going through it. I was just like, I can't imagine going through it one time. Even
I
I
had
don't
a
even know if I would even have ever qualified.
I had
But
some
like, it was like one of those
celebrities
like things that just when
that.
you read all the events, it's like an insane
Yeah,
competition.
it's 60 hours nonstop. There is nothing but one brutal challenge after the other. No sleep. Food is strictly controlled. It is in the world's toughest competitions. No exaggeration. It typically ranks up there in number 2 or number 3.
So Jeff, you have got to
Angry
be the
partner,
most
by the way.
hardcore
He's
person I know.
one.
Yeah, you've got to be the most hardcore person I know. And and then so you go on your tracking, you get have all these things going. You're definitely being all lined up, and you feel the calling by God. I'm going to ministry, and it was not an easy road for you, right?
Not at
Explain
all.
that.
Right. Yeah, I'm up running one early one morning, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, I just did it. I told everybody publicly that I'm going to pursue ministry, but I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We have 2 children, and she is about 7 months pregnant with our third child. And
Mm.
for me, most of your audience will get this. I've sat there on this long run early in the morning, like, okay, God, I don't understand how this math is going to work out. How do you pay the bills and go to seminary when you have no job, no income, a third child on the way? And I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to make all of this work out. And no exaggeration, like within a matter of 48 hours, God made things fall into place that I never even saw coming. But man, I was wrestling with the, I don't know how to pay the bills. And we have a one income family, and I'm about to give up that only income, and we have a baby that's on the way, and I know, God, I'm supposed to do this, but where's the money going to come from? And like he always does, at the 11th hour, everything fell into place. Some days I wish, God, couldn't you make that fall into place a little bit earlier? But he always shows up, and his timing is always perfect, man.
Absolutely. So just such an incredible part of it. So you become a chaplain. You start off in the 82nd.
Yeah,
Uh,
and by the way, I should say this is before September 11th, so, this is a very different military than after September 11th. You'll remember this, Michael,
yep.
when before September 11th, people used language like, "If you ever go to war in your career, here's what it's gonna be like." After September 11th, the language was, "When you go to war, and again and again and again, here's what it's gonna be like." So it was a very different military before the global war on terrorism kicked off.
It's very true. I mean, I was a company commander at the airborne school when 9/11 happened, and then I had no idea that my follow-on sign was to take a second company command in the 3rd Infantry Division to actually do the invasion,
Sure.
right? And so, and nobody knew then how everybody's op tempo was going to change,
Uh-huh.
how like it just basically changed all of our lives. And you're right, it was like, when are you going to go? And I think majority of us, the reason why we're in ministry now and that we do what we do, and we focus on issues of morality, and we try to talk to people and work through moral injury and PTSD and all the different traumas that are going on out there, is because we're a military that has been through 20 plus years of conflict since 9/11. Now they're starting. People are coming in the military now, and they're slick sleeve wearers, and you don't have that, but they're something can change overnight. Next, they're going to deploy,
Sure. Yeah.
right? So, we hope that like not another 9/11 happens, but you never know when our nation's going to call on our military to do it again. And so, like, our work is never done to minister to people. Um, when you within chaplaincy, because you did it at 82nd, you did it at Second Ranger Bat, uh, you know, um, tell us what ministry was like as a military chaplain
Yeah.
and dealing with people who, I imagine you dealt with some that had deployed, some that hadn't. And what was ministry like in the military?
Yeah, it had every possible challenge you can imagine and then some. But honestly, it also had opportunities and privileges that are mind blowing. I used to think to myself every day, like, the United States Army and God has just given me the greatest congregation on earth. Not necessarily the biggest, but definitely the greatest men and women. And I get a chance to minister to them. Like, wow, what a privilege. And while I'm serving them, it became really, really, there were some moments, man, I'll never forget them, where I'm just getting ready to do some real practical ministry. And it all became very obvious to me that God gave me all of these past experiences as an enlisted guy with a very solid faith for moments like this during the war on terrorism, where they needed somebody that was both spiritually strong and had a past that they could relate to. And man, I'll carry some of those moments with me to my grave. Doing Bible studies on the side of a mountain in Afghanistan under rocket fire, being in the side of in the back streets of Iraq, and being around America's greatest warriors and ministering to dudes, guys and gals who just been through the crucible of battle. What a privilege, man. I don't think that military or law enforcement ministry is for everybody, but for the guys and gals that do it, man, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, it just really is an incredible thing. So going back to like Emily's book, right? When you did this, and we said, but I felt the Lord saying, Jeff, you were able to fight the way you did last night because you have already settled your death and eternity, and the rest of your buddies haven't. Right? This was your calling, and they need someone who understands them, who knows what they are going through, who can look at that in the eyes and talk to them. And I want you to be that guy. Well, Jeff, I can tell you that everything I've read about you and everything I know of you and our connections with Jack Crans and everything else like that, that you are doing your calling.
Well, thank
And, I really appreciate you. It's just an honor just to get to meet you. I look forward to next month. Hopefully, I'll be able to be there with you at the old guard and
That'd be
get you in
great,
the
man.
hospital
Yeah.
and be able to actually spend some time with you in person. Um, and uh, and so I want to thank you so much for just taking the time and being on our show today and being able to share a little bit. I know we only scratched the surface of everything, but thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the invite, and thanks for the way that you're leading these men and women who are leading others.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, I know people, I know you don't want me to do this necessarily again, but I'm going to do it again. I'm going to add this back to the stage. Listen, I highly encourage everybody watching, go out, get Jeff Struecker's book, learn this story. I only scratched the surface. It is an extraordinary read. Not only did I like the movie Blackhawk Down, but it's good to read his book, and it's really cool if you read his book and then watch Blackhawk Down.
Sure.
You get like a really cool appreciation. I think in our country we need to never forget our history, and learn. And then there's so many valuable lessons when it comes to morality and it comes to your faith and service and honor, duty, country, all that. Like you get a lot of that out of that. And then I'd also pick up Emily Capano's book too, because you're chapter 2, but all the chapters are dedicated to a great American warrior who has a story to tell about their faith. And to be able to go through and read all those stories, it's just an incredible thing to do it. So I encourage you all to do that. Please also make sure you guys go ahead and like and subscribe to this video. We're going to try to get more people on for more content similar to this, so you can learn about Jeff's stories and other stories that are like it that are out there. Jeff, thank you so much again for having us on. Any parting words for our wisdom? Do you want to pray for them, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks again, Michael. Let me say a prayer for the audience. Father, I want to thank you for the men and women that are watching or listening to this episode. God, would you cause something that you said through your Holy Spirit to touch their hearts and to strengthen them, especially when the nights get long and the rucksack is heavy because of the load that you've asked them to carry. Would you remind them that you go with them, even into the valley of the shadow of death, that you'll never leave them, you'll never forsake them, and help them to find courage and strength to follow you, no matter what they're facing today or in the future. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you again for your service to our country.
Thanks,
I
Michael.
appreciate you. All right, everybody, this is Morality Matters, and you know it's because morality really does matter in our country. And so you guys keep fighting the good fight. And until next time, we're out of here. God bless you all.